Happy Monday, everyone. If you've been in any online discussion of Spider-Man over the last few years, then chances are you have heard the same phrase over and over again, specifically describing Miles Morales as being, and I quote, full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen. Believe it or not, there's a pretty decent amount of lore to the quote, and a lot of misconceptions around where it came from, who said it, and what they meant by it. I still see people attributing this quote to the wrong people. Some even said a few years ago that I was the one who said it, which is awesome, thank you. Anyways, let's look into how this quote came to be, its lasting impact, and how it affected the person who actually penned it. Spider-Man Miles Morales released in 2020 alongside the PlayStation 5, and a big part of the game's theme was showcasing who Miles Morales is, and that he is more than just the other Spider-Man. Because of this theme, considerable care was given to how Miles is presented in the game, specifically in his age, experience, culture, and interests. This is why things like hip-hop were so prominent in the game. It was one of his passions. He even has a sampling station at home. And while Uncle Aaron's beats make me think that maybe he should stick to being the Prowler, it's clear that music connects the Morales family. Even outside of hip-hop, we see through the music on display at the Christmas dinner the kind of person Rio and Jefferson are and what their marriage was like. Puerto Rican and black culture were at the forefront, and it landed incredibly well.
His father is black, and there is plenty of Spanglish, some Puerto Rican flags, little actual authentic details that I recognize as a kid growing up with Puerto Rican heritage myself.
I saw a ton of people praising the game's cultural authenticity, and one of the people who intended to do so was Jordan Ramey, who in their review for the game said the following line.
The way he leaps off of rooftops and flips backwards to face the camera before falling into a headfirst dive is just full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
Now, I have a question. Do you remember anything else they said in the review? No? Yeah, that's because this one line overshadowed everything else in the review, and it caused a bit of a firestorm too, for two reasons. The first was that, let's be honest, it was a bit of an awkward thing to say, and second is that in a vacuum, specifying that Miles has black swagger made some feel like it was racially charged, especially those who didn't know who Jordan was. But before we find out about the person behind the review, let's try and understand what they were trying to communicate. When we look at the animations for Miles, we can see that despite any racial signifiers being present, there are definitely signs of his inexperience in being Spider-Man and his ego. In my own extensive critique of Miles Morales, I mentioned this in reference to Peter, so allow me to paraphrase myself a little bit. When Miles swings, he often does so flippantly. He dives into whatever orientation his body lands, he has form, but not for the purpose of optimization, instead for the express purpose of looking cool. It's important to remember Miles' perspective on being Spider-Man because it's the same as ours. When Peter got his powers, he had no idea what to do, and being Spider-Man was something he had to figure out. For him, it was about responsibility, and sure, there's a huge rush that comes from swinging, but it was uncharted territory. Now let's look at Miles, who after presumably spending most of his childhood looking up to Spider-Man, now has the same powers. To him, Spider-Man is more than the responsibility, more than being a protector. He's cool. I believe this is where that exaggerated swagger comes from. He leaps off of buildings in that headfirst dive because his ego is through the roof. He's experiencing firsthand the feeling of being a superhero. I believe this is why Miles' animations are, simply put, so much more fun than Peter's, because he really is having more fun. Furthermore, Miles is a teenager, and we've all been teenagers. We know that this exaggerated swagger where you try to look cool, and admittedly often look a little cringe, is part of the growing pains of puberty. This is why Miles has such a robust set of air tricks. It's a direct reflection of how he sees swinging, not just as a means to an end, but as a means of looking cool and expressing himself. So, okay, Jordan, I assume, wanted to communicate how he felt black culture was accurately represented in the game. Great, except I think we can all agree that the wording was a bit strange. The reaction, however, for the most part, was just making fun of the line, but then how do we explain the like to dislike ratio on the review? Well, I imagine some of it has to be attributed to how goofy the line is, but a surprising amount of comments seem to be interpreting this line as being racially charged in a negative connotation. Now, an important bit of context that some people don't know about Jordan is that they are black. This could spark a side discussion about the ways in which people assume race from the way people speak, but I will leave that discussion to people better equipped than I am. Now, I hear you saying, Aqua, why bring race into this? And it's simple. Someone who was a black teen would likely know what the exaggerated swagger of a black teen looks like. I think this is necessary context, because what if my bald ass said this? Sure, I'll admit, I'm a self-proclaimed white boy with motion, and I engage with a lot of black art and literature, but what the fuck do I know about the black experience? Jordan's race also plays a role when discussing intent, because, as also indicated by the rest of the review, he almost guaranteed meant this in a positive way. Now, just because someone is black doesn't necessarily mean that their words have immunity, but it is important context that many, including the GameSpot editor, felt was worth sharing, specifically stating in response to someone reposting the infamous line, "Hi, GameSpot editor here. If you actually bothered to read and listen to Jordan's review, who is black, the majority of it examines Miles' experience of being a black character in New York City. This shameful tweet of yours just reeks of you assuming he was white and speaking out of turn." Now, this might be harsh, but I wouldn't be surprised if the entire GameSpot team was a bit annoyed by this whole thing. Sure, some reaction is warranted, but as someone who has their own YouTube channel, I sympathize with how annoying it is to have one moment, sometimes a singular sentence, be a near defining moment for the brand and the reviewer in question. I've never experienced something to this extent, but I know that there have been plenty of times where I've made videos that took weeks, and because I get one fact wrong, it feels like every single comment is making fun of me for a minor slip-up. Even on this channel, I remember when I made my video talking about why people didn't like Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2. I brought up the idea at the end that sexism could have played a role, and insisted that while sure, some misogyny might have been a factor, it was important to keep the focus on the real issues with her character. This resulted in plenty of people thinking that I was calling them sexist for disliking the character. And while I think that kind of defensive reaction should prompt the teeniest bit of introspection, it's also annoying because how in God's name did you get that? It's a similar sentiment to my feeling with Jordan's review. The whole review is in praise of the game, its culture, and how he appreciates the way Miles' heritage is presented. So how could I, given the context, interpret this line as anything other than a compliment that came across the wrong way? In the near half a decade since the review was posted, you might notice that Jordan hasn't really said anything on the matter, and honestly, I think that is the best response to stuff like this. Too many times when there is controversy, the creators feel the need to double or triple down. Sometimes it's better to just ignore it and move on. To again relate this to one of my own experiences, sometimes I have made brutal clerical errors or have had unpopular takes in my reviews, and instead of screaming, "Fuck you guys, leave me alone!" you just take the shit and move on, because how can a viewer forget about it if you can't? Jordan has advanced their career plenty since this review. Beginning their employment at GameSpot in 2018, they advanced from their position as a writer, editor, and to now overseeing a team of writers and planning budgets for the editorial previews and reviews. But why don't we hear from the person who said it? I was fortunate enough to ask Jordan a few questions about their feelings on the meme, and here is how that went. Could you try to explain what exaggerated swagger looks like?
I don't think it looks like any one thing. It's one of those things that you know it when you see it. Almost every teenager thinks they're cool, and that's literally never the case. But they go out of their way to make sure that they are seen as cool by those around them, to appear more put together or adult or attractive or whatever. It's exaggerated. They try a little too hard, and in trying too hard, it comes off as a little goofy and reinforces their naivete or youth. It's one of those things where it's like, if you're cool, you're just cool. If you try to act cool, you kind of look a little goofy. And that's how I think Miles looks and acts in the game. I actually think it's one of the better parts of Insomniac's Miles Morales game. They could have just had Miles use the same movement and same swing animations as Peter, and I don't think fans would have been all that put off by something like that. But by going the extra mile to really reinforce how much Miles is trying to be cool, is trying to be like his heroes, trying to be seen as this person who's very adult, very put together, very in control, very powerful, his actions and movements come off as exaggerated or extra. Like, he's putting so much more effort into swinging than Peter does. For Peter, web swinging is a form of transportation. But for Miles, it's an art form and an expression of his personality. And it's just cool as hell that Insomniac did something like that.
How do you think that relates to black culture in America?
I'm definitely not the end-all, be-all expert on black culture in the United States. I can only speak to my own experiences and what it was like having to play up my own blackness, since I grew up in a city that was primarily Asian and then went to a college that was pretty much all white. I've grown up my whole life being congratulated for getting A's in honors or AP classes, or going to a 4-year college, despite being black. They always add at the end, oh, it's so cool that you did all these things despite being black. Like I was doing something especially good for a black person. And conversely, I've been told my whole life that I sound white. Whatever that means, I don't know, but it is what it is. I've heard of similar experiences from other black folks, and for us at least, again, not for every black person, but for us at least, going out of our way to exaggerate our blackness in our teens and early 20s was our way of differentiating ourselves from our white peers. As a way to both reclaim our blackness and remind the world that we were black. We didn't want to be seen as exceptions to our black family members, friends, and peers, but also we didn't want to be seen as people who sounded and acted like our white peers. When I first played through Insomniac's Miles Morales, I saw some of those emotions reflected in Miles' journey. He wants to be a Spider-Man, but he doesn't want to be seen as the carbon copy of Peter. So he's going out of his way in how he moves and acts while he's wearing the suit to differentiate himself from the OG. That's kind of my take on it, at least. Again, other black people will have their own interpretations of it.
Was there any doubt about the line before the review was posted?
If there was any doubt from others, like other editors or producers or anything like that on staff, nobody told me. If anyone else had any doubt about the line, they did not tell me before publishing. I didn't have any doubts about the line. I can at least speak to that. GameSpot's reviews are typically looked over by 2 to 5 editors before they're published, and back when I wrote the review for Miles Morales, we had a reviews editor who also looked over every single review before it was published. Callie Plaguey, I miss you every day. Your guidance and wisdom and knowledge was such a help for me when I was first starting at GameSpot, and I miss being able to freely access it at any given time. GameSpot's process of editing and going over drafts, it hasn't been perfect. It's not perfect now, and I don't think it will ever be perfect. It's certainly suffered with our team getting hit by layoff after layoff. Less people on staff means less perspectives for editing articles, and each editor being forced to spend less time with each draft. That just means a greater chance of either outright mistakes or simple weird wording, like exaggerated swagger, squeezing through the cracks. As like another example, like just last year, this was something that almost squeezed through the cracks. Our review for South of Midnight almost went up referring to Resident Evil Village as a game set in American South. That's not true. That would have been like such a lie. Resident Evil 8 Village is not the one set in American South, it's the one before that, Biohazard. 4 editors missed that. I missed that on my first 2 rereads of that draft. I only caught it on the 3rd, right before it was about to go up. It was about to go live. And that just happens sometimes. We're human. Sometimes you just read something and your brain tells you what you read is the correct way to say something, even when it isn't. Most of the time we catch mistakes like saying Village instead of Biohazard, or weird wording like exaggerated swagger, and other time we don't.
How did you feel about people's attachment to the meme?
A little weird at first, to be honest. Mostly because everyone thought I was being racist and using my whiteness to put down black people. And like, that's not true. I'm black, I'm not white. And my hope with the review for Miles Morales was to highlight how the game celebrated both black and Puerto Rican culture. But also, like, what can you do? The internet likes to run with stuff. It wasn't the first time that has happened to me, and I doubt it will be the last.
If given the chance, would you change the line?
Probably. I had been writing reviews for games for about 2 years at that point, and there's not a single review from that time period that I don't wish I could take another stab at. That line is not the only part of that review that I wish I could change. My writing has improved immensely since 2020. I don't think 2026 Jordan writes that line. I honestly don't think 2026 Jordan writes a lot of lines in that review.
How did the meme affect you personally, if at all?
Not too much. A few of my friends and family members asked me about it because the meme spread widely enough to invade their online circles, like on Twitter and TikTok, despite many of them not playing video games. But usually they'd only ask me about it once, shrug once I explained it, or just kind of look at me blankly, not really understanding, and then they never brought it up again. I kind of chalk it up to the fact that the memes and discourse of the video game industry sounds like chaotic madness to most of the rest of the world. So a lot of the stuff that happens in it rarely affects my personal life.
Did the meme affect your career?
I would say no, at least definitely not directly. I've been given more reviews and even bigger games, and I've been trusted with more and more responsibility since then. I have a ton of contacts in the industry that don't seem to care about it, and since the meme's creation, I've gotten more opportunities, not less. When it came time to review Spider-Man 2, I was the first choice on staff for our managing editor. Assuming we get a Spider-Man 3 from Insomniac, I'll probably review that too. In an indirect way, the meme kind of affected my career in that I think it helped me realize the importance of expanding my vocabulary and working on my essay writing skills. Since reviewing Miles Morales, I've had to review a lot more games that feature protagonists that express themselves through movement. Forspoken, Spider-Man 2, Jedi Survivor, Tales of Kinzara Zhao, South of Midnight, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Hollow Knight Silksong, Constance. And I think I've done a much better job of describing what those movements look like, analyzing them, and explaining why I like them. I would say the meme showed me how much my writing was structured in a way that you could really only understand what I was trying to say if you were me or a close friend. So you could say that the meme impacted me professionally by showing me where I still needed to improve, which was doing a better job at explaining myself. And I think you can see that in a lot of the reviews that I've written in the years since writing that review.
Are there any final thoughts about this meme?
Not really. I'm sorry, that's not really a spicy answer. I honestly haven't really thought about it since 2020. I guess this interview was my final thoughts on it. The internet moves so fast that spending any time thinking about it just wasn't in the cards. Just more discourse, more stuff to think about.
And finally, is there anything else you want to say to the audience?
Please keep reading my stuff. Please keep reading my stuff and talking about it. It keeps the lights on. It allows me to live. I cannot read all of your emails and comments, but I do my best, and I appreciate you all. I know that most of the people who use that meme maliciously are not people that care about me or GameSpot or my writing, and most of the people who use it, I think, use it in a more jovial, teasing way than anything else. And for those asking, I still have the afro. I see you every once in a while. Someone jumps in my comments and is like, Jordan, do you still have the fro? And I do. I apologize that I haven't been on many GameSpot videos recently to show it off. But yeah, I think that's everything from me.
Thank you so much, Jordan, for your time. And I think we can all agree that this meme hasn't slowed them down in the slightest. And I think that's an important lesson here. It's true, the internet never truly forgets, but they always have bigger fish to fry. And no matter if your mistake was a misjudged compliment or a massive factual error, you can always bounce back. Remember the meme about the Pokemon Omega Ruby review from IGN that stated it had too much water? Do you remember who wrote that review? Of course you don't! It was a woman named Callie Plage, who after that review went on to do localization work for Nintendo themselves. If the people who make the games with too much water don't care, then trust me, no one else will. So remember that the next time you are taking a risk, trying something new, or just failing once in a while, failure is temporary. And if the guy who gave us this clip of Cuphead, infamous for how poorly he played the game, can move on to become the editorial director of the same company he worked at when that clip circulated, then you'll be fine as well. Thanks for watching, and go out there and try things. If you fail, no one will remember in a year.